I won't be able to get in.
Can I say something to Gary?
People will be listening to whatever
okay.
you say. People are coming in. Welcome. We'll give everybody a few seconds to get in, and then we will jump in because we've got a lot of pictures to look at today. It looks like we got a good group started, so let's go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Animas Museum's second Saturday seminar series for September. Boy, is that alliterative. My name is Susan Jones, and I'm on the board of directors here at the La Plata County Historical Society in the Animas Museum. We're so glad to have you here today as we restart our webinar series after a bit of a summer break. This webinar for us has been a perfect example of that proverbial silver lining we found during the pandemic, because Zoom allows us to involve people in programming who love Durango, but for whatever reason might not be able to be here right now. So our presenter today, Kathy Gibson, is actually in Michigan. But since she has deep Durango roots, we are so glad with Zoom to be able to have her here today to share her stories. We got a lot of amazing pictures. Let's jump right in. I want to introduce Kathy Gibson, who is the great-granddaughter of the photographer Frank Gonner. And I'm going to let her introduce herself and how she got started learning about her family and discovering Frank's story. But before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. We are using Zoom's webinar feature, which means that you're all muted and your videos are all off. At the bottom of the screen, and you may need to mouse down a little bit to see it, there are a couple icons. So today, to minimize distractions, we have disabled the chat function, so you won't be able to chat. If you do have an immediate issue or question, please click on the Q&A icon, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the talk. So you can type in your question if you can't wait till the end when we're going to open it up for questions, or if you can't hear right or there's some other technical problem, type it in and we'll get to you that way. But at the end of Kathy's talk, we're being really careful to have some time so that we can answer your questions. You can either type them into the Q&A and we'll answer them then, or at the end, you can click on there's a little hand icon, and you can click on that, and we will allow you to unmute one at a time to ask your question if you feel brave enough to speak on the webinar. Because this session is being recorded, and you will receive a link in about 24 hours via an email that has a link right to the recording, and you can watch it anytime you want. And we'll probably also post that link right on our website, animasmuseum.org. So with that, if there are no questions, we're going to turn it over to Kathy. Go for it.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to my great-grandfather, Frank Gonner, who created a legacy of Durango photographs between 1889 and 1912. We'll talk about our family, Gonner's photographic partners, and Durango in his time. I hope I've not made too many errors in dating or incorrectly attributing a photo to Gonner. As family genealogists, we look for every bit of information, no stone unturned. In condensing 25 years of history to 45 minutes, we have to eliminate information and photographs. There is so much more history about these photo stories that I can tell here. We'll show a nearly chronological outline of some interesting bits of Durango history through Gonner's photography. Much is based on newspaper articles too. This photo that we're looking at now was taken about 1880, 1890 or 1889, before or after the fire. I'm not sure. You can see all the familiar places, the depot and the roundhouse on the right, the Strader Hotel, the Methodist, Episcopal, and Presbyterian churches on 3rd, Longfellow at the west side up high, and across the river, the hospital and St. Columbus Catholic Church. But the courthouse has not been built. possibly one of the big blocks you will view in a few minutes as well. My quest began in 1988 when I finally looked in the trunk belonging to my great Aunt Pearl. The women of the family saved Gonner's photos, great grandmother Hattie's diaries, obituary newspaper clippings, glass plates, and old film negatives, photo albums of family and the Western Power Company, and more. Robert McDaniel, then the director of the Animus Museum, helped me start the story. We've discussed the history of many photographs over the years. And other directors and volunteers, genealogists, friends, and family have helped me with this history. This endeavor is a 10,000-piece puzzle under construction, 125 years after Gonner arrived in Durango. So let's go back in time and look at Durango's history through the lens of Frank Gonner, photographer. Frank was born in Pfaffenthal, Luxembourg in 1860. His father, a truck farmer nurseryman, expected him to be a priest or join the German army, but Frank chose America. He immigrated in 1880 via Castle Garden, and Ellis Island did not exist then, and went to Denver to work for his uncles in their flower and vegetable nursery in Denver. He found his way to Durango by 1887. A.E. Wilder, the photographer, was selling his home, inventory, and equipment and planning to lease his gallery on Main Avenue. Jacob Boston, the photographer, was busy taking the photo from Smelter Hill that many of us are familiar with. Hattie Estelle Roberts, our great-grandmother, arrived from the Missouri family home in early May 1888, met Gonner, attended church with him, and was hired as a teacher at Longfellow School after passing the Colorado teacher's exam. Her mother and younger sister Pearl arrived in August. They all lived in her oldest sister's boarding house. Now, this photo is an old tintype of William Henry Roberts, my great-great-grandfather, Hattie's father, who arrived in November 1888 in response to the opportunity to lease Wilder's photography gallery, and probably for Christmas too. A few weeks later, Robert's partner from Missouri, Anson Corey, arrived to work with him. They used Wilder's photo materials, including the photo cards with Wilder's name on them. A December 23rd, 1888 newspaper mentions they are turning out some excellent work, 15 years experience, and do all kinds of India ink and crayon work. We don't exactly know all Gonner's occupations before he trained to be a photographer. He was a grocer in Santa Fe, 1883 to 85. And after moving to Durango, he worked at the Archdeacon's Ranch up the valley and at Henry Schrader's Bakery. A few newspaper ads mentioned his business was established in 1889. This is an early Wilder photo of Gonner. Am I out of order? No. Or did Roberts take this? It is evident in Hattie Estelle's diary that she and Frank became friends. When Frank began to work with Roberts, I can imagine a comment from Roberts: "If you wish to court my daughter, you must have a lucrative trade to support her." But we weren't there to hear that. Did they court? Probably. She was busy teaching and stopped writing in her diary. Here is a photo of Hattie Estelle's classroom at Longfellow School. Hattie had 1 year of college in Clinton, Missouri, and was 19 when she moved to Durango. She was hired by Mr. Smith, the superintendent, in July 1888 after she passed that first Colorado teacher's exam. She taught the number 2 classroom there the school years of 88 and 89 and 89 to 90. Here's the famous photo after the big fire. The fire occurred July 1st, 1889, and it changed everything for photographers Boston and Roberts. Both their galleries were total losses, and so were many other businesses and homes. We do not definitely know for certain who took this photo from the west side of the Animus. All I know is that my grandmother told me my great-grandfather took this photo. Was that her father, Gonner, or grandfather Roberts? Where did they move after the fire? Maybe to Roberts' corrugated iron building in town. Both Mr. Corey and Roberts were carpenters, too. Could they have helped rebuild some of the houses? Longfellow School, also called Southside School, was farther west than the fire. It is the very prominent building in the back of the photo up against Reservoir Hill. And there it is. Gonner bought Corey's photographic equipment, and Corey placed an ad in the 1890 Colorado Business Directory for Corey and Gonner, the first official partnership. In 1891 and 1892 were good years for Gonner. Here's a photograph of my family. This restored photo was taken around 1891, based on the ages of the boys, probably by Roberts. Back row is Frankie Ferris, Hattie Estelle Roberts, Frank Gonner, and in the middle, Regina Ferris, Susan Jane Roberts, holding Regina's third son, Albert, and Pearl Roberts, and the bottom child is Earl Ferris. It was taken in his gallery at the Colorado State Bank building after the fire, probably after Frank and Hattie were married in June 1891. So watch for similar backdrops and imprints on these photos that we're showing you. They help us date these photographs. Here's a photograph of Hattie Estelle Roberts in her wedding dress. Frank and Hattie were married early in the morning in the big family home on June 17th, 1891, and they took the train to Silverton for their honeymoon. Susan Jane Avery Edens Roberts, her mother, my great-great-grandmother, note the backdrop in both photos. And here it is again. And the Gonner and Lika portrait of Gustaf Nordenskjöld from Sweden. This photo belongs to Harvey Leek, great-grandson of John Wetherill. Another printing of this photo is in Judith Reynolds' book, Nordenskjöld of Mesa Verde. That summer of 1891, Nordenskjöld was in Mancos Valley Canyon, excavating with the Wetherills. He visited Gonner's gallery in July and sent the photograph to his father in Sweden. There are no Durango newspapers for this summer to be found. We could learn so much more about Nordenskjöld with those 6 months of newspapers. Note the backdrops and props in this photograph, the same as Hattie and Susan's photos. Now here's a photo of the booklet from Gonner and Lika. They created a collection of photographs. There were 2 Lika brothers, both photographers, in Durango in 1891. One, William Leakin, left Durango for New Mexico and worked as an itinerant photographer. The other brother, Francis Edgar, worked in the smelter. Durango rebuilt with modern brick buildings. This series of postcards from Gonner and Lika show the recovering, strong economy and new housing at that time. There are 32 photos in the collection, and we have found 25. We'll look quickly at these. You will recognize some of them as I mention their names. The museum, the Center of Southwest Studies, and the Denver Public Library Digital Collection have some of these. Most of them are numbered in the order of the booklet. The first one is the Methodist Episcopal Church on the Boulevard, 3rd Avenue, and it's still in use. The next photograph is the First Presbyterian Church north of the Methodist Episcopal Church, and it's still in use. And once again, Longfellow School, but it burned December 1901. It was between 9th and 10th on East 5th on the east side of town. Whittier School was called the North Side School. Hattie Roberts became the principal of Whittier for the 1890-91 school year. This was on Main Avenue and 19th in North Durango, the area north of the Animas River as it turns westerly through town. And the People's Hotel, now the Rochester Hotel. And the photograph of the Strader Hotel, many of you have seen this. It was built 1887-88, and it is the most prominent and treasured building in Durango to this day. It has changed some. The facade has changed, but it's still the most beautiful building in town. Then there is the Schrader and Schnee, as labeled in the booklet. Then the Williams Block, and the Ricker Block, and then the Schneider Block, and all these are still standing and in use. And you might remember from the Schneider block that Parsons Drugstore was there when we were younger. Okay, this is Chapman's hardware store. I'm not sure if that building is still standing. Maybe someone will know. And the next is the old J.L. Parsons Drugstore location, before the one we all knew as Parsons. And the New York and San Juan smelter on the west side of the river. Here is the San Juan flour mill, also known as Graydon's flour mill. And Mercy Hospital, that's in the North Durango. The Amy Mansion was built in 1888 and purchased in 1935 and became Hood Mortuary. It looks a little bit different today than it does in this photo. And these two houses, the Newman and Wainwright homes, 929 East 3rd on the northwest corner of 3rd and 9th. And I had to look it up to find it, and it's still there. Judge Sumner's home is now still at 1361 East 3rd. And it looks different, but the roof tells us that this is the house. And here's an unidentified woman. Gonner and Leka, created in 1891. I found this on the internet. And this family, the Charles Negelin, Bertha, his wife, and daughter Ruby. He was the blacksmith of Durango and does have quite a history. Note the backdrop, same as the other photos that were made from Gonner and Leka. We do not know why Gonner and Leka dissolved their partnership. We might know if those summer newspapers are found. Gonner and Hurd partnered in November 1891 and created the Durango Art Gallery in the front of the second floor of the Colorado State Bank building on 9th and Main. That was built in 1892 and later known as Burns National Bank in 1907 and the Irish Embassy restaurant of a few years ago. This partnership did not last too long, as evidenced by the imprinted names on the photo cards between 1891 and June 1893, when a fire destroyed the gallery a second time. I found only a few Gonner and Hurd photographs. I've not found mention of the dissolution of the partnership. Hurd received his physician's license as an allopath. And here's a picture of the unknown young man. There's the backdrop again. And then the Durango High School graduation class of 1891. Same backdrop, and this is at the Center of Southwest Studies. And then, this is interesting, the Riverview store on the San Juan River. Gonner and Hurd photo from the Bud Werner Memorial Library website, and Gonner and Hurd is on the side there of the photograph. And here are some of our family homes in Durango. The first house, probably built by Roberts, Hattie Estelle purchased the land in 1888. The entire family is in the photo, except Frank Gonner, who presumably took the photo, on East 2nd Avenue and 20th, a block or so from Whittier School. And this house is still occupied. And then along 2nd Avenue, not far from Junction Creek, here's a photo of the house in the Plata and the La Plata Mountains. What a view. Our home, no, this is Hattie Estelle and son, Henry Paul Gonner, about 1893. This house belonged to Hattie's oldest half-sister, Regina Ferris, whose husband died in 1888 in a coal mining accident. Regina gave it to Hattie after marriage to Gonner in 1891. At that time, the family was still living in the big old house there. Our home, handed down, our home, my sister's and mine, handed down from the Ferris family to our grandmother, then our mother, and now belongs to us. These last two houses are side by side on 23rd. Gonner was alone at the bank building gallery between late 1892 and June 1893, when that gallery burned. Regarding the fire, the newspapers did not mention Gonner and Hurd, only Gonner. He did lose all his work, including the 1893 graduation class photos. During this time, his photography can be identified by Gonner, Colorado State Bank Building. By this time, the Roberts had returned to Missouri. This was identified as Austin Prowse or Pruce from probably 1893. It's on the back of the print. It's a Gonner photo without Hurd at the Colorado State Bank Building before the fire. The El Morro Tavern used this for a poster advertising their business. I'm sure there are more. And here's Hattie Estelle Roberts Gonner, Frank's wife, my great-grandmother, about 1893, from the gallery at the Colorado State Bank Building. And their son, now this is interesting. This is Henry Paul Gonner. Printed on the card is over the Colorado State Bank Building. The souvenir edition publication, this copy is at the Animas Museum. It's dated January 1st, 1893, created by Dave Day, editor of the Daily Muldoon and the Raymond brothers of the Daily Herald. This publication was to advertise Durango. It covers an area of 8 counties, lands, and this bustling, economically sound town, which could supply the needs of new settlers. The publication mentions the photos are all from Gonner, and some are from Gonner and Leka from 1891. They show a prosperous town, churches, huge brick and block buildings, lovely homes, the smelter or sampling works, the foundry, the courthouse, and the fertile land in the valley. And this is from the publication. It's a parade on Main Street, and we believe it's a Gonner. And these are the churches of Durango, same as the 1891 postcards. Now, this is the front page photo from the 1974 Herald Southwest Colorado article about the souvenir booklet. Note the smelter stack is in line, is in the center of this well-balanced photo. I apologize for the crease. I've been storing this newspaper since 1974. And here's another photo of Main Street, 1894. The trolley running down the middle of Main was electrified in 1892. And you can see the electric lines. Now, these 3 photographs are not of Durango, but neighboring towns. This shows that Gonner did get out and about to take interesting photos outside Durango. We'll see more as we continue. This is Hesperus, April 5th, 1894. The Rio Grande Southern already went through Hesperus on its way through Mancos up to Dolores, Rico, and the final destination, Telluride. This photograph shows a gathering for some reason. Here is La Plata, Colorado, May 5th, 1894. This was a busy place due to the mining up the La Plata Canyon. Charlie Eckberg, whose family settled there for a time, tells me it came about after placer miners from Parrot City were discovering gold and silver veins higher up in the mountains, prompting a new settlement. And this is La Plata, Colorado, Main Street, and we don't have a date for this. This belongs to the Cumbers and Toltec photo collection. Sometimes Gonner used the name Gonner Photo, F-O-T-O, with an F. After the fire, Gonner moved to 1052 Main Avenue. That year, the repeal of the Sherman Act, making gold the metal standard instead of both silver and gold, created a severe depression which affected all aspects of silver mining and so much more. A letter from my great-great-grandfather Roberts, written to my great-grandmother Hattie, mentions, all the smelters are shut down and all kinds of work is stopped. I think that you had better wait until there is some sign of a renewal in nursery and smeltery before you spend any money in a house or photographic instruments either. I would be cautious and go slow and see a change for the better before I went into the business again. And he had just lost his gallery, so this was his father-in-law's advice. Gonner's gallery from a photo about 1912, 1052 Main, which is not there anymore. Animas Museum, this is an Animas Museum photo, and it was called the Schwartz block, which was that photo of the letterhead. It was evidently built before or shortly after the fire. Note the canopy. I wonder what color it was. Who is walking into the gallery? Okay, there's the letterhead. But by 1894, if not sooner, he was busy. It shows the Schwartz block, which no longer exists. It was demolished sometime before the new old post office at the corner of Main and 11th was built in 1929. I can't find a record of the approval to demolish it. There were only two businesses in that building, and from 1907 until 1912, Gonner used both sides, one for his music store and one for the gallery. And here are a few more family photos belonging to our family. This is Frank Gonner, his portrait. And then this is him in his AOUW uniform. The Ancient Order of United Workmen was a benevolence group like the Elks or Ancient Order of the Pyramids. Two other groups he belonged to. We have the sword and the belt only. Very interesting photograph. Here are Frank and Hattie's children. Henry, born in 1892, maybe 6 years old, and Dorothea, born December 1894. She might be 4. And this was an unusual one because it has a black backdrop or black card, and I've only found a couple of those. Here's a picture of Lizzie Doyle Scheilman. It's a beautiful portrait. I almost think it might have been a graduation dress that she's wearing. And here's a portrait of an unknown man. Now we come to my favorite character from Durango, William Nelson Navajo Bill Wallace, 1895. Probably taken in Durango. It belongs to the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, the McCracken Research Library. He was born in Indiana, became a soldier at the end of the Civil War, studied pharmacy, and went to Portland, Oregon to open his drugstore. Due to contracting tuberculosis, Wallace came to Animas City at the request of his brother, Dr. J.P. Wallace. He worked for 2 different drugstores in Durango and ran for coroner in 1887, and I don't know if he won that election. Bill moved to Farmington to recover from the tuberculosis and became a trader of Navajo goods, working at Dick Simpson's trading post in Gallegos Canyon. We drove out there to find it, but missed it by maybe half a mile. Some adobe portions of the post still stand in the Gallegos Wash below the farmland. He traveled between Farmington and Durango over the years, even taking his Navajo friends to Denver and Washington, D.C. They also came up to Durango to purchase wool for weaving. Now, here is a snippet of Navajo Bill's portrait hanging in the Durango Music Store, which was Gonner's business in 1910 and 1912. Watch for this later. Gonner took first prize for this photo. This is a newspaper clipping I found in Robert's scrapbook. This is Navajo Bill's retreat, 1894. It's at the Center of Southwest Studies. This photo started my research maybe 15 years ago. Just this year, I found out with the help of Julie Pickett exactly the location of Bill's artifacts exhibit. It was at the Miners Club on the 2nd floor of the Colorado State Bank building after the fire restoration. Several other Gonner photos are on the walls in the window and on the wall behind Bill. And I wish we could show you every little piece of this, because in it are skulls and Indian implements and wool rugs that he was trading. It's an incredible photograph. And the Durango Wheel Club was very busy before the end of the 19th century. Many newspaper articles tell of parties, races, trips out to Trimble Springs. It must have been great fun riding out on a dirt road more than 8 miles to Trimble. They also took a trip out to Baker's Bridge one June day in 1895 for a picnic. This is the familiar Gonner photo. The photograph was reproduced as a poster. There we go, the bridge picture was reproduced as a poster in 1995 for the 100th anniversary of this photograph as a fundraiser for the Animas Museum. I finally was able to purchase an original photo. This would have been more than a 14-mile trip one way. They had to go by way of the Waterfall Ranch and Trimble Springs and on up the valley to the bridge. What a fun day they must have had. I bet the women rode in the wagons. And then here's another photo of the Wheel Club taken in front of the Strader Hotel. The Labor Day Parade, unknown year. Author Philip Aleo owns this. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have the names of these people? You can see the Strader in the background too. Here's a fine photo of a man and his daughter on their bicycle from the Main Avenue Gallery. This was an online photo. Now, here's the Animas Log Schoolhouse. I know this is out of sequence, but this is the schoolhouse kids attended back when Animas City was first built, about 1876. It wasn't until 1948 when Animas City was annexed to the city of Durango. Now, the trolley finally was extended down the middle of Main Avenue to 32nd Street Bridge, to 32nd Street in 1895. And this is the 32nd Bridge that crossed over the river, and it was there early on. The newspaper mentions the mother of Doc J.P. Wallace and brother William was injured in a carriage accident on the bridge in 1881. Here's a photo of the San Juan smelter. This smelter operated between 1882 and 1930. It processed coke, copper, silver, and gold. It was reinstated to process vanadium during World War II. Later, all of it was removed, the tailings relocated to the other side of the mountain, and the land reclaimed. And here's a panoramic view of the smelter, of the San Juan smelter. Here's an article from the Daily Herald, December 1896. Gonner sent his work to the Denver Camera Club and won a prize. William Henry Jackson and George L. Beam were some of the Colorado photographers who led this group. At some point, it changed names to Colorado Camera Club. In 1903, Edward Steichen, Gonner's compatriot Luxembourg photographer from New York, created a photographic exhibition in Denver. Could Gonner have seen that? Hattie Estelle died in June 1897 after the birth of their third child. I have a letter from her sister Regina to the rest of the family in Missouri about her death and burial. She noted that Gonner had not opened the gallery those months Hattie was struggling with the pregnancy. He surely must have been disheartened. His mother-in-law took the children back to Clinton, Missouri in September 1897 for an unknown duration, but returned by the next summer before one of the nephews drowned in the Animas River near the ice house in Animas City. Here are some more portraits, more photographs from the Main Avenue Gallery. This is the new 1906 Animas River Bridge. It's Gonner's handwriting. This is kind of out of order, but it's important to history. The man who built it was John Justin McKinnon, a stonemason from Prince Edward Island, Canada, who built the bridge in 1906. He left Durango for Ignacio about 1913 and built streets, buildings, and sidewalks there. He is buried in Greenmount with his wife and child in the Elk section. And then here's the Animas Bridge from the south side. I'm not sure where the bridge was then at that time. Here's an old picture of City Hall and the fire department in which existed 1892-1905. And here's a portrait of the Volunteer Hook and Ladder Company, 1881 to 1894. This is slightly out of order too, but it's a great photograph. This is Durango, the Durango Fire Department. Chief Lewis Smith is on the far right bottom row. Robert and I interviewed his son, Lewis Smith Jr. He told about his father and Gonner working together in the early 1900s. Note the Gonner signature, typical of his work at that time. And I love this photo. It's the fire department and the building, July 4th, 1911. Also out of order, but that's okay. The history of the fire department is quite interesting. The banner reads, "Remnant of the best volunteer fire department ever organized," and some of its original members. And Lewis Smith is the chief standing in front. Lewis bought Boston's gallery in 1898 and became a competitor to Gonner. Now, here's the one photograph of the courthouse that Gonner took that I've been able to find. These are the Durango rifles out in front of the new courthouse. It was built in 1891, 92. Photos taken after this by Frank Balster, another Durango photographer, shows mature trees lining the perimeter. The photo cuts off the tower and the clock, but you can see the face of the clock in the Animas Museum. This is a fun photo. Nathan's department store. In front are wagons full of apples from Farmington. 1898. We just acquired this photo and I'm so pleased with it. It has AP Camp's name on it, which is interesting. AP Camp was quite a character too. Now here's a picture of Longfellow School with the parade. Unknown date. The school was in operation in 1888 when Hattie first taught there and burned in December 1901. And here's a photo of school children, October 1898. I confess I'm not sure which school this is. Someone out there will probably know. And here's our family, Patriotic Day, July 4th, 1898. This photo is about 2 inches by 2 inches, taken with a Kodak, which Gonner sold in his gallery. Some of the family is from Missouri. Frankie Ferris probably took this photo. Gonner is the third from the left. My great-great-grandparents are next to him. August 14th, 1898, Frankie Ferris, one of the nephews, drowned in the Animas Museum near the Ice House in Animas City. On August 17th, the city council met and banned swimming in the river up to 5 miles from the city limits. Here's another Gonner. It's a postcard. It's a double postcard. 1900 is my guess on this one. The courthouse and the Strader are visible. Keep in mind, Gonner died in 1912, so we have to date it earlier than 1912. Note the electric poles. Here's a fine photo of Chief Buckskin Charlie and his sons, Antonio and Julian, around 1900. This is most certainly a Gonner photo because between Charlie's elbow and Julian's is a building that is in the backdrop of a photograph of Gonner's son, Henry. I have an original print and the film negative of this photo, written on the back by his daughter, our grandmother. Here's a photo of the neglected mine photo, 1902-03. Part of Gonner's signature is on the far lower left side, and this belongs to the Animas Museum. A notice in the newspaper alerted me to his trip in the mine in January 1902. He went with several friends, Charles Newman and Frank Rivers. Gold and silver were the primary metals. The mine is in the headwaters of Upper Junction Creek. The clarity of this photo is outstanding. This is the front page of a publication from the Durango Democrat, printed in a 3-part book on the entire area. Basically, it tells the history of the area up to 1901. Dave Day chose 4 photographers for this publication: Gonner, Frank Balster, C.H. Peters, and Michael Brumfield from Silverton. In it are the histories of the counties, the general area of Durango, businesses and people, the businessmen of the area, and Day even includes a short article on Gonner. I believe this publication must have given Dave Day his idea to create a pioneer gallery of photographs. This included the men who came to the original San Juan County before July 4th, 1881. Several times in the Democrat, he lists names of men who belonged in this collection of photos. He advertised for this endeavor from 1900 to 1908, and he hoped to make it available historic work, make it a valuable historic work by including the collection in the public library and in some state historical setting. They attempted to photograph as many as possible, and this Durango, the smelter city, includes an initial group of portraits. Day called this project the Gonner Democrat Art Enterprise. Later in 1908, a collection of 125 large portraits, 18 by 24, were displayed at the Democrats' private room and at the Pioneer headquarters. Does this collection exist? I haven't found it. The Woodman Band. This is the only photograph of the Woodman Band I have found. It dissolved and renamed as the Citizens Band in June of 1904. Gonner became the president of the newly named band, and his 16-year-old nephew, Earl, number 6 in the photo, became secretary. Friday nights, the band played at Brookside, several corners on Main, their own band balls, at the Colorado, New Mexico Fair, and parades. Okay, this next one is from Animas City looking south to Durango. I think this boardwalk is in front of my great-great-grandparents' last home. They built it in 1903. And here's the photograph. Great-great-grandparents Roberts. They lived here between 1903 and 1910. They are the old folks standing on the porch. And this is another one of those very small photos. Gonner took photos of the baseball team, and this is from 1908. The Animas City has this photo. Baseball was so very popular, and rival teams traveled to play each other for many years. Here's a photo of Frank Gonner as exalted ruler of the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks, 1909. Frank became a member in April 1904. In June 1910, Gonner, F.L. Quirk, Jack McKinnon, and Ernest Weitzinger went to Detroit for the 1910 National Elks Convention. The newspaper mentioned they returned to Durango a month and a half later. I wonder about that. They must have had a good time. This is the interior of the Durango Music in May 1910. This is an Animas Museum photo. Gonner purchased Professor Doucette's music store that was next door to his gallery in 1907. He named it Durango Music Company by 1910 and sold fine pianos, ambarolas, and the cylinders to play on them. He partnered with Harry Thimgen, who was a piano tuner and the Denver Music Company's piano salesman. This partnership lasted a short year or so. And there is the photo of Wallace on the upper left wall. Okay, so there is the other a close-up photo, the same photo of the gallery and music store on the left east side of Main. The buildings across the street. Oh, let's see. Can we go to the next photo? There we go. Now you can see the gallery there with the woman standing at the door on the left. The buildings across the street are still there on 10th and Main with the same windows. The old address was 1053 Main, Thompson's boarding house, where Gonner and John McKinnon boarded for a number of years. John, an Elks member, rode the train to Silverton after Frank's death, February 25th, 1912, and accompanied his body back to Durango. Can you wipe out of your mind Main Avenue as we see it today and then view it that way with the dirt? And it just must have been a wonderful place. Here's a photo of what I believe to be the Durango Gallery, 1913 by D.C. White. The photo is dated July 1912. I looked for the other galleries in town, and none of them are in this position on Main Street, Main Avenue. This photo is dated after Gonner's death. DeWitt Clinton White, photography for the Democrat and later the Herald, purchased his photographic inventory in March, Gonner's photographic inventory in March. He opened in July as Gonner's successor. While he took many landscape photos in Durango for a few years, White took the photos, they are featured in the Herald. He was from Pueblo, then Ouray, moved to Durango in 1912 and left Durango before 1915, moving to Salt Lake City. Did he take Gonner's work with him? I have found no Gonner photos in Utah. Now, Gonner is buried at the top right at Greenmount, buried by the Elks, with the symbol on his headstone from the Woodman of the World, Dum Tacet Clamet, which means, though silent, he speaks. His documentary and portrait work were prolific, quality, and historical, and they speak on his behalf. Let's hope more photos will appear now that we've publicized his work. And thank you to Susan Jones and Carolyn Bora for your labor of love for this history. And thank you, our audience, for watching and contributing to the Animas Museum.
That was amazing, Kathy. What an incredible bunch of photographs and a fantastic history that you have shared with us today. Do we have any questions? Please go ahead and type them into the Q&A if you have any, or raise your hand and I will let you, we'll let you speak. And if you do have questions that you think of later or in the middle of the night, don't call us then, but send us an email at info@animasmuseum.org and we can get a hold of Kathy and have her answer questions. I see a hand there at Pat Barnes. Here we go. Yeah, you can unmute and talk, Pat.
Hi, I
Hi,
would
Pat.
like to ask Kathy about the book she is writing that contains so much of this material. How's it coming, Kathy?
Well, thanks, Pat. This was kind of a fun way to remember what I'm really trying to write about. And it's coming on slow because this took a chunk of time to put all these in order. But I'm hoping that, one day we'll have that book in hand and we will have it at the museum, and won't we have a party then? It's a labor of love too. I've been working on it a long time. And thanks for asking, Pat. Pat is one of my friends at our poetry group in Michigan.
So you put her up to it. All right.
Nope.
Anybody else? Was that too painful? No. Okay.
Well, surely someone will come up with something.
Yes.
Someone will come up with more photos or more questions or answers. We've talked about this, that history, it doesn't change, but we get more information from time to time. And hopefully maybe some people will fill in the blanks that I've left.
Okay, Linda, go ahead and you can unmute.
Hi, I have one picture that Kathy has, or she has a copy of my grandparents and my grandmother and her family that their last name was Compton. And I am pretty sure I have some more. I am not in my home right now, so I can't look for them. But if I look through them and they have a Gonner name, would you like to have them?
Yes, and thank you, Linda, for giving me that. We had a tough time picking out photographs for this. I had like 150 photos that we had to cut down.
Oh, I bet you did.
So I would, I wish we could have shown yours, but because it's a beautiful family photo. So yes, if anyone, I hope everyone now will go into their attics or their trunks and find photos and share them with the museum, because this is our history. It's your family history and mine and many, many other people. And it would be great to show them. They can scan them and have them available for other people to see.
All right. Let's see. Jim Gillies, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, I was just wondering why there were so many fires and what was the cause of them?
Well, the fire in 1889, gosh, that's not coming to mind what caused it. A spark from somewhere burned across town.
I'll talk more about that in a minute before we hang up.
Okay, but the other one, many photo galleries did struggle with fires, and I don't know my chemistry well enough to know what might have set it off. But Michael Brumfield lost his gallery in Silverton. Oh, it might have been Uray. It happened a lot back then.
And still happens today quite a lot too. Yeah. We do have one question that came in through the Q&A. And the question is, what were the circumstances of Frank Gonner's death?
This is a tough question because it's kind of personal in a way. We don't know what happened to Frank really, truly in his business practices. I think he had a lot of partners. I think he had some discouragement in his life, and he did go to Silverton and died there in a boxcar. The coroner said that he had committed suicide, but we don't, the coroners back then, I was told, were not medical people. They were not doctors. So we weren't there. I wish we could have been. The dairyman found his body there in the boxcar. And that's the bare bones of it. Thanks for asking. That's a tough question to answer.
That sad situation. Let's see, we've got Jim. Go ahead. Do you have another question, Jim?
Yes, I'm sorry, I needed to unmute. Kathy, when was the last time someone lived in your family's house, and who were they?
Well, recently my nephew and his wife and 3 children were living in the house. Our little house there that in the snow photo. And they are still there. My nephew passed away this summer, so his family's there. And my sister and brother-in-law keep their eye on the house all the time. And it's never been unoccupied. We've usually had it rented after our grandmother died.
Wow, that's great. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we got a comment. Wonderful presentation. I learned so much. Thank you, Zadie. That was great.
Thank you. Yeah, we've really been working hard on this. It's been a lot of work, but it's so rewarding.
Oh, here we go. Jean, go ahead and unmute.
Yes, hello from Luxembourg. I have a question regarding Gonner Frank. Was he also in collecting minerals? Because I have a report from the Luxembourger Gazette. Nicholas Gonner, who was the author also of the Luxembourgers, A New World, was visiting his brother in Denver, and he reported about that. And he said that he got a lot of minerals from Colorado, which he planned to send over to the school over in Luxembourg. And clearly, probably Frank Gonner would be the person to help in making such a collection, because definitely he was in the mining area. Are you aware of anything that he collected minerals or something like that?
I don't have anything that the family left. And by the way, thank you for being on today, Jean. I'm so thankful that you're online right now. He did have some interest in a couple different mines, but we don't have a rock collection to show it. Now his brother, his uncle Matthias Prosper had a mine up in Lake City at one time. And he might have been the one. Lake City is up in the mountains between Durango and Denver. And Matthias Prosper and Jean-Pierre were the two brothers of Frank's dad who lived in Denver. So it could have been either one of the men. And Jean-Pierre left Colorado in 1890 and went to California. So could have been any of them, actually. That's very interesting. I wish I could read the Gazette, but I can't. It's in German, I think.
It is in German, yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for asking.
Okay, anybody else? If not, I'm going to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion for the museum. Kathy mentioned that Frank Gonner's career really got started after the Great Fire of 1889. And this summer here at the museum, we have prepared a self-guided walking tour all about the Great Fire. You can get a copy here at the museum, at the Durango Welcome Center, or at the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum, or online. You can either download a copy and print it out, or we have a version available that you can just look at on your phone as you walk the tour. And it talks about where the fire started and how it spread and how much devastation it caused throughout Durango. So that's an option that's available to you. We want to thank Kathy so much for sharing her family story, and thank you for joining us. And again, you're going to get an email within 24 hours that has a link to this whole recording of this webinar that you can just watch right online. If you'd like to see more programming like this, please support us. Use the donate button on our website, which is animusmuseum.org. Become a member either on our website or in person, or give us a call. We are open to the public right now on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. And one other thing, we talked about that wonderful photograph that Frank Gonner took of the Durango Wheel Club at Baker's Bridge. And we have those for sale. Sorry, we can't ship them. The shipping would probably just be more than the poster is worth. But if you come by the museum and mention that you saw it on the web, you saw it here on the webinar, we'll give you half off the price of a poster. So that'd make it $5 plus tax. So if you'd like to see that. If you are also interested in some digital copies of maybe some of the images that you have seen today for your personal use, if we have the rights to the photo, for $15, we can get you a digital copy, and you can have it printed out and framed and decorate your house or your summer house or whatever in Durango with all of those. If you're interested, we'll try to get some of those on the website as well, but otherwise just contact us at info@animusmuseum.org. Finally, let's see, next week on Saturday the 18th, it's Smithsonian Day. So if you're in town, the information's on our website. You can download a free ticket to visit the Animus Museum from the Smithsonian website. So you can come visit us for free, and we'll be open 10 to 4 next Saturday. Then on September 25th, as part of the Colorado Humanities Durango History Live presentation, which is a month-long celebration of all kinds of wonderful history events that you can get more information on our website as well. We're going to have our event, Animas Museum Live, where we're going to be focusing on the history of sheep in La Plata County. We're going to have costumed interpreters spinning and weaving and preparing fleeces and dyeing. We're going to have 2 book talks, one by Dr. Ruth Lambert about the arborglyphs, the carvings that were made in the aspen trees by herders around the area. And in the afternoon, Dr. Andrew Gulliford, his book, The Woolly West, is finally coming out in paperback. So he'll be here to give a talk and do book signing. They'll both be talking and signing books, and some will be available for purchase here at the museum that day. So that's September 25th. So it's pretty busy. And then finally, next month, we are going to have another webinar as part of our second Saturday series on October 9th at 1 p.m. And we're going to attempt to do a virtual tour of Animas City, and which will be really interesting. More details will be forthcoming in both on our website, in our e-blasts. Members will get all of that, and on our Facebook and Instagram. So follow us on social media. So with all of that, thank you so much again, Kathy, for all your hard work and all the love that you've shown in putting this presentation together. And thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you next month. Have a great day.